All right, boys and girls, welcome once again to the Bass, Kayak, and Beers podcast on the Paddle and Fin Network. Not cracking my beer open yet because I have a special guest, and one of the stipulations if he comes on the show is we gotta crack the beer open together. So, speaking about that, my next special guest, Paul Roberts. You might follow him on Instagram under Paul Heels. He is part of the Bass and Brews Podcast along with Alex. Super excited to have him on the podcast. Fun guy, fun to talk to, and we're going to be diving into, why he loves kayak fishing, why does he do this thing that we do on a little plastic boat following fish, like my wife says, and how he got into the whole podcasting. And by the way, go follow Bass and Brews, listen to their podcast. It is hilarious, it is funny, it is entertaining, and every now and then it's actually informative. But go check it out, Bass and Brews. I'm sure you'll be able to find it on pretty much any podcast platform. If not, Paul will correct me when I bring him on. Other than that, having a great week, but a tough week fishing. Haven't been able to put up a solid pattern. The transition to cooler weather it's not working for me right now. But hey, we're grinding it out, and hopefully things are gonna be working out soon. Hopefully, I'll be able to take part in the TKC championship later in October, and have a few trips planning out later on fall after that tournament. So maybe I'll get to do a little bit more fishing. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, let's bring in my next special guest. But before that, remember follow or go check out my sponsor, Douglas Rod. Go to douglasoutdoors.com to check out the full lineup, X-Matrix rods, LRS rods, and their great fly fishing rods. Amazing rods, award-winning rods. And we're going to go to a quick commercial, and then we got Paul Roberts from Bass and Brews joining us. Stick around. You're going to like this. Paul, my man, how's it going?
Man, I'm wonderful. How you doing, Armando?
Pretty good. I just noticed you changed your name to Cat Tea Expert. What is that all about?
Oh, man. Well, so I know people are listening. They can't see. I'm a cat tea connoisseur. And so I have a lot of cat teas. And if anybody can't understand my enunciation, I'm wearing kitty cat T-shirts, like T-shirts with kitty cats on them. And so this one right here now is a kitty cat on a rocket.
That's pretty cool. If you ever gone to Austin, Texas, those things will sell out in Austin, Texas, man. I don't know what it is. Every store that I go has cat teas everywhere.
But I didn't get to Austin, which sucks. I spent 2 weeks just outside of Austin in the airport because I was a wildland firefighter at the time, and I spent 2 weeks getting training in Bastrop. So I drove from the airport in Austin to Bastrop for 2 weeks every day. And I never got into Austin because I had training. But if you're ever in that area between Bastrop and Austin, there is Benny's Texas Barbecue. And I'm pretty sure it's still there. It is a little hole-in-the-wall shack. I think it's Cedar Hills, maybe. It's almost in between that. Go eat his damn barbecue because it is something unbelievably good. And I'm from the Carolinas, so I know good barbecue. But his stuff was good. I ate it every day he was open and took it home for dinner.
Yeah, Austin is Texas capital. Not just the little capital, but also when it comes to barbecue, it's kind of like their thing over there, and food truck thing. Texas is weird. It's kind of like California. It's not really Texas. I don't want to get that whole political thing started, but it really is. It's like this is the most ironic thing. It's the Texas capital, and it doesn't feel like Texas at all.
A good friend of mine is from southern Texas.
Yeah.
And so he calls himself Texican. He's been here in the Carolinas here for 15, 20 years about now. Anyway, his funny part about being from Texas is the only vegetables he eats is salsa. Literally. The only vegetables he has ever eaten is in salsa. He don't eat salad. He don't eat baked potatoes. It's nothing. His only vegetable intake is salsa, and then the rest is meat. And he says that's how you know we Texican.
Yep. Well, I have how do you call that? Forgot what it is, but I have a saying that is, if there's not a dead animal on the plate, it's not really a meal. I'm sorry for all those vegans that may listen to my podcast. It's just there's not a dead animal. It's not a meal.
I get it. I get it. And we'll get into this a little bit later because we got to crack our beverages.
Oh yeah.
But
well, let's go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No. We'll talk about eating some meat later. But yeah, let's crack our beverages so we can get into the good stuff of the podcast.
Who wants to go first? You want to go first?
I'll go first because mine ain't really exciting. But I will tell everybody here, if you listen to as many podcasts as I do, Armando, I don't know what the hell he does, but he has the best opening of any podcast where there's a beer crack. I mean, I'm not sure what he does because he cracks that beer, and it like I'm driving down the road 99% of the time when I'm listening to this podcast, it makes me want to pull over and grab a beer and shotgun it. I mean, it's that good. So I wanted to be a part of the greatest beer opening pop in podcast.
There you go. I'll take that title.
But I am drinking a Bud Light Platinum Seltzer. It's 8% because funny story is I had a gout attack last Thursday. I can barely walk because my big right toe is all, I don't know if I can cuss on this podcast, but it's all effed up. So I'm drinking some extra seltzer waters tonight because I got the gout because I guess I'm getting old.
Brian Schiller, who runs the Paddle and Fin, probably appreciates us keeping ourselves self-edited, just so you won't have to edit that much, because we do have to post on Waypoint TV, and there's some rules that we have to go by. Not that I mind at all, but yeah. But we'll try. If not, we'll give him a little bit of work. It's okay.
Well, you've heard our podcast, so you might realize that every now and again I'm going to have a curse word slip. Probably.
It's all right. It's all in good context.
Yep.
All right, so let's see. That might be the problem why it's not sounding the way it is, because it's a Bud Light seltzer. Don't mean to, mad dog your beer right there. But that just might be the problem why it's not sounding as crisp as it should. But we'll go ahead.
Fair.
Not hating on it though. Go ahead. That's not bad at all. You got that little and that pop at the end. Yeah. That's nice. That's nice, crisp.
Yours is all one fluid motion. It's just like pow.
Okay, let's give it a try.
Yours makes me want to go get a beer.
Well, you got sort of a beer. Okay, here we go.
See, I'm telling you, dude. Listen to it. You don't listen to your podcast. Listen to the difference.
You have to shorten that little between the pop, and you have to be a little bit more quicker about.
Well, I got
popping it open.
I got small, short hands, so it's hard to get up under there.
It's all in the hand, I bet. Well, I'm actually, now that since you're giving shout out, I'm not sponsored by them. Deep Ellum IPA. I'm not a real fan of IPAs. They have two IPAs that I like: the Deep Ellum IPA, and they also have Deep Ellum Brewery. They also have the Easy Peasy IPA, which is more. I'll turn over my mind card on this, but I drank a lot of beer while I was in high school and college. I lived in Puerto Rico, so the legal drinking age is 18, and of course we started earlier than that. So I don't know what happened. Somewhere in my mid-30s, I could no longer handle the hops of a true IPA, so I've kind of moved into more of lager. I'm not gonna do the light beer unless I'm trying to lose weight though, but more of a lager. And what's the other? Stout beers. So IPAs I've kind of I know it's not, it hurt me. It hurt me when I realized, I can't do the IPAs as much as I used to be able to. I don't know. Well, I guess I overdid it in high school and college.
Armando, I'll tell you this. I love beer. I love good beer. I love crappy beer. But when the gout hits you, you just start drinking seltzers. I can almost guarantee you if you get the gout. But, man, you got to start earlier than most of us around here. So that's why, because, you said your age before, but damn, man, you age good. You don't look old. as you say you are.
I'm almost in my 40s, man. I don't know. I guess it's all the beer. I'll credit the beer.
Yeah. And good
The
rum.
hops on the
And
beer.
Good rum, right? And good rum.
Yeah, that too. It's no rum like Puerto Rican rum, I'll tell you that much.
That's right.
But yeah, I guess we haven't really got into that subject, but my dad is a man's man. You know, he gets home, he opens a beer, and he eats while drinking a beer. I cannot, every now and then I'll have a burger and fries and a beer. For the most part, I cannot just sit down from Monday to Friday, have dinner and eat a beer. That's how my dad was. He was like, sit down, have dinner, not with a glass of water, beer. That's it. But he battled gout. He still battles gout every now and then. But yeah, it's horrible for him. Oh man, he's just old man beer, something like
Budweiser or something.
It was like we went through some hard times financially. At one point, I remember opening the fridge and I saw something like Schlitz beer, and I'm like, "Good Lord, I'm like, Dad, is this really that bad? Are we really this bad? Am I gonna send me out for adoption? We're buying Schlitz now? What the heck?" I was like, I guess he got tired of me drinking his beer, and he says like the only way he's gonna stop me from drinking his beer is buying like the worst beer ever. Schlitz beer, man. God, that was horrible, man. I remember those times. That was bad. It was just bad beer.
You say that, dude, but Schlitz beer ain't bad. Like, if you want to have a good beer to drink, look, here's my thing. What I tell people, I don't discriminate against ABVs. So if it's got alcohol in it, I'm going to drink it. There ain't nothing I won't drink.
You're a man's man, Paul. You're a man's man. Except for the beer and except for the seltzer and the tea cats, you're a man's man. All right, so let's talk for kayak fishing.
Wear a cat tea. That's all I got to say.
Let's talk about kayak fishing before we keep going downhill on this. God knows how many listeners I've lost so far. But how you got into kayak fishing, man? What got you into it, and all that?
It's an interesting story. So I grew up down in South Carolina. I grew up fishing. The same story as probably 90% of the folks have told on your podcast, anywhere else. Grandpa took me fishing. One of the interesting facts about where he took me fishing was it's called the hog pond. And it wasn't a hog pond because there was big fish in it, even though there were big fish. But it's because 3/4 of the pond kept the hogs from escaping the hog pen. So pigs. So you'd be fishing and you'd be throwing your lure up against the bank, and all of a sudden you scare a pig up out the water. But anyway, so he took me there. I guess I was 4 years old. I caught a fish. I don't know how big it was. Probably a pound. I made him take it home, and we cooked it and ate it. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning. And anyway, from there, that's all I wanted to do was fish. And that I got into fishing. My mom and daddy bought me I grew up with a little John boat with my daddy, and we went to ponds. And then, so I got into high school. I got a little John boat of my own. And in 2000, I graduated high school, and I went to college, and I played football. Well, that ended like anything, because when I got to college with football, it was 365. And that's what I was there to do, and that's what I wanted to do. So in the summer times, I worked out, took summer school classes, played football. So from 2000 and then 2005, I joined a local bass club, and I fished as a non-boater. And it wasn't BFL or anything like that. It was just a bass club where I fished as a non-boater. I was one of like two. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved. I moved back down to South Carolina. And at that point in time, this was 2008, started a new job, new career. Fishing quit. So fishing quit in 2008. And I've got thousands of dollars in rod and reels at this time. I've Shimano and good rods, bunch of lures, and that's it. And I bought, in 2015, we moved a quarter mile from the Savannah River in the Augusta, Georgia area. And we were there. We bought 2 kayaks. One of them was the Sun Dolphin, the cheap ass little Sun Dolphin, sit on top,
Yep.
$250. But the other one we bought was a Avalon 120. And this was a fishing kayak, 2015, so a while ago for fishing kayaks. Because a fishing kayak had yak attack rails, and it had 2 rod holders.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought this kayak to fish in on the river, and it was a paddle kayak, but it was a Walmart kayak. But look, man, this kayak was nice as hell. It's 70 pounds. It tracks straight in the zero. I mean, when you talk about, you listen to Drew Gregory and talking about where he likes to launch.
Mm-hmm.
And because you got a Hobie, I'm 100% fish out of a Hobie PA now. But this kayak is one that I can throw in the back of the truck and take 3 rods and a handful of baits and just throw. So it's a great kayak. We're on the Savannah River, but it was just fun. Like, I took ultralights out there and fished with ultralights. We had a little pond behind our house, ultralights. I got into watching kayak fishing at this point, 2015. So kayak catfish, some local guys. Chad Hoover was one that I found at that time. So I started looking, oh, this is cool, and then just didn't work out. So I was fast forward last year, November of last year. I'm like, I want to start bass fishing again because I ran into a guy, and so now I'm in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And so Raleigh, North Carolina is Falls, Jordan, and Sharon Harris. So if you've watched MLF, you've seen those 3 lakes here this past year and the 2 years ago, right? So I go out there. I'm just using it as exercise. Go out and paddle my kayak and ultralight fish. I saw a guy there with a Hobie PA-12. His name's Steve. And I'm like, holy shit. Look at your kayak, dude. Holy crap. It's on the water interfaces trailer and this and that. I'm like, God dang, he's got like a 12-inch screen on it. And this would have been November of 2020. So I come back home. I tell him, what, I want to start bass fishing again because there's a kayak league around here and I can kayak fish in a league because I had started around that time. I started looking at joining another bass club around here as a non-boater. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we get into it, start fishing in November of 2020, and February we get into it. I buy a Hobie PA-14, used 2018, love it, all this and that. So that's really November of last year is really when I got into the kayak fishing. And at that point in time, I mean, 2008 had been the last time that I had really fished. So I had, a lot had come up since then. Rods had become a lot lighter. The A-rig wasn't around when I fished. Like, there was a lot of shit come up, and I'm like, holy crap. But I got into kayak fishing from that, and the sole reason that I wanted to get into kayak fishing at that point was because I could compete. Like, before growing up, I knew guys that fished in the old days, like it was called the Redman series. And those were your local series where guys fished to try to get on bass. And so that was what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to compete. But I saw the kayak angling side as an opportunity for me to compete, but also to be in control of my own destiny. If you've ever fished out in the back of a bass boat in a competition, it ain't easy. Like your destiny, you don't control as much of your destiny as you can when I get to be in that kayak. So yeah, I mean, I literally my first tournament was February of this year in a kayak here in North Carolina on a local level. And every time I take it out, I go out with a mindset of I'm competing. Like I'm either in a tournament or I'm learning, I'm practicing for a tournament.
Awesome, man. It's like you said, you start off with your grandparents, your parents, your family members. Different, I guess, for everyone. Um, when you're a kid, and then once you pass puberty, start focusing your attention on girls. At least your generation, my generation, they like cool stuff. They like, for you, it was maybe football. For me, growing up in Puerto Rico, was surfing. So our attention now goes to, you know. Impressing the girls and stuff like that, which they're not into fishing, at least not in our generation. And then as you come of age, you kind of come back to it because it's just, I don't know what it is about it. Some of it is just in your DNA, remembering those days, when you spend out with with your father figure, in this case, my father, in your case, your grandfather. And having a good time, just kind of like when life was simple. And when you go fishing, that's it. Life just kind of slows down and it becomes simpler. Fishing is hard and it's kind of complicated now, but just being on the water, it's just that, I guess to me, that going back to time were simpler times. And that's what makes it to me relaxing. And, my wife tell me, how can you spend so much time sitting on a plastic boat on the water, not doing anything? Says, well, every now and then I'm catching something. But yes, there are, you and I know this. There'll be a few hours in between one fish and another for the most part. But it's just relaxing. It's just having fun, just being out there when life, remembering times when life was just simpler.
Yeah, it is. And you hear that. The story that I told is not, there's nothing special about my story. Matter of fact, it's probably, if the folks listening to this podcast have heard the stories that folks you've had on here, and that's typically how it sounds. I started fishing as a kid, high school, girls, college, whatever happened. I quit fishing and I come back to fishing now. And you're having these folks on your as guests who are I mean they're successful tournament anglers, locally or nationally. It doesn't matter. But that story is not special. But what's special about that is taking the lessons that we learned and understanding from that time when we were young. And your story is a great one too, is we take those experiences and we're able to now, as middle-aged folks or almost middle-aged folks, we're able to take those experiences and now start to relive them. And not only relive them, but if we have children at this point, we're also sharing those experiences with kids at that time. And they could be your kids, they could be your nieces and nephews, whoever it is. So it's taking those experiences that we had as younger, and now we're putting them back out there, and we're getting to enjoy that. I mean, that's the joy of life. I mean, I'm not a pleasure angler. Like, I just don't like to go out there and fish to fish. Like, I always, in my mind, either I'm fishing a tournament, and if I'm not fishing a tournament, in my mind, I'm practicing.
Yeah.
I'm trying a new lure. I'm graphing. I'm always and to me, and this is this is the difference in the pleasure fishing.
Yeah.
Being at a past, like I want to kayak fish because I can compete, because that's an avenue that I was able to get in financially with the equipment, which is a kayak. And I mean, you could go out there with three Zebco. You can go out there with one Zebco 33. And if you can afford a kayak, you can compete on the Hobie BOS, the KBF. You can do that. So the entry point to compete was so much less because all I needed was a kayak. And so that competition side is what really got me excited. And that's why I fish. I mean, that's why I go out there. Is either I'm competing or I'm practicing to compete. And so I think that's a difference. The way
it is
at fishing is, I don't, I say I don't like to joy fish, but like I'm either, once or twice a year I go fish to eat, catch fish.
Yeah.
But 99.9% of the time I'm going out there, either I'm competing in a tournament online that day or I'm practicing for something in the future. That's the mindset that I have. I'm a competitive ass person, and that's what I want to do. I need that competition in my life, and the kayak angling side gave me that entry level to do that.
No, and it's you hit the nail on the head with that one, because I like the friends that I've gotten me into kayak fishing. They do it more for like joy fishing, pleasure fishing. You know, it's like a way to kind of get out of the house and, you know, be in the water, be with nature. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that, you know. And a lot of them fish for like hybrids or sand bass, what we call them, sand bass here, wipers or white bass, and that's catch and cook. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I've heard you talk about sand bass, and Mark Pendergraft talked about sand bass. What the hell is a sand bass?
It's white bass. So, I don't know.
Is it all right? Yeah. Okay. See, the vernacular is different, because when people are talking about sand bass, I'm like, what the F is a sand bass? And so you're talking about white bass. So here we have white perch, which some people call white bass.
Yeah.
But a white bass is a non-hybrid striper, and then we have striper. It's just all confusing. So
it is. It's kind of confusing. And we also have in Texas, Trinity River is full of yellow bass, which don't even get me started on that, because that's completely different. I don't know why.
But y'all have also the Guadalupe bass.
Guadalupe bass is just a hybrid spotted bass. That's all it is. I mean, it's a beautiful fish. I love when I catch a Guadalupe bass, and it's not native to Guadalupe like some people think. It's like, oh, it's only native to Guadalupe River. No, it's actually, it's in a lot of river territories here. They caught it in the Brazos River. I think they caught one registered under Granbury Dam. I caught one. The jury's still out there with it's a spotted bass or a Guadalupe bass. I posted it on Instagram. Yeah, and a lot of most people commented it's a Guadalupe bass, and they kind of explained it. I don't know. I can't really tell that much of a difference. But yeah, there's also the yellow bass and the white bass and the wipers and the stripers. Yeah. So yellow bass, for whatever reason, you can catch as many of them and keep it and cook. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, yellow bass is not restricted. White bass, I think you can count, or sand bass, you can catch 25 per person, and that's it. And then you got I think stripers, it's 5. And then hybrids, I think it's 25. I'm not sure. Which hybrids, to me, don't quote me on this, but I think it's a cross between the sand bass and the striper, but I'm not completely sure. Honestly, I don't know. There's so many. So
on that, so I'm part of a group called Hookset Hoodlums. If anybody's heard of them, you follow. And look, it's some damn hoodlums. Like, I know a lot of people follow this podcast that are on KBN too. It's like the rejects of KBN. So it's some crazy ass. But anyway,
how can you be rejected from KBN?
Well, we weren't rejected. I'm just saying. Just an example of who we are, but regardless,
what kind of people do you have here now? Just joking.
Armando, exactly. But no, it's a great group of guys. You know, we promote each other. It's really cool to be a part of it. But what I'm getting at is this, and we kind of talked about this in the pre-show. Do you eat largemouth bass?
I don't. I don't judge people that do.
Do you eat fish?
I eat fish. Now, I don't know why. I just love bass. Like, every time I catch a bass, it's like, you know, rescuing a little puppy from from a shelter. That's the way I look at it. I love bass, man. I just love it. I can't. I mean, I don't hate people for eating bass. If they want to eat it, that's fine. It's not, you know, but I've kind of like talked myself into that, because when I see somebody posting on social media about eating bass, I was just like, God, no, please don't do it. But the reality of this.
Little Jimmy. That was little Jimmy.
No, the reality is I hate it, but I'm not gonna judge anybody. It's just because I love them doesn't mean it's still not a fish, and it's supposed to eat. I don't think they're that tasty. I've tasted them. I don't think they're that tasty. I'd rather eat a crappie or a sand bass than a largemouth bass. I can't see anybody. I don't even know if people eat smallmouth bass, but I think I would really have a hard time if I see somebody eating a smallmouth bass, especially in Texas, because they're very rare. I mean, I wouldn't say they're very rare, but yeah.
I mean, they're not common. Like if you just go out to your, so look, I grew up in a little podunk ass town in South Carolina. It has 700 people in it. And only about 200 actually lived in the 1 square mile town limit. Like we claim 500 other people in the town, they even live in it. But we fished, the fish we had were small lakes and ponds, and the only fish in there were brim, bass, and what we call jackfish, pike, pickerel, I don't know, whatever them Yankees call them, but we call them jackfish. But and catfish, I mean, in the bigger bodies of water. So I grew up eating a lot of fish over time. Largemouth bass are delicious. People wouldn't know if you put a largemouth bass in a crappie and you fried it. I guarantee you, 99% of the people wouldn't know. But here's the other thing too.
Crappie's a lot sweeter though. But plus crappie, you don't get that blood on the meat. I don't know, when you cut the crappie, it just comes straight translucent white, which really takes out that fishy taste. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'll tell you this when it comes to eating fish. If you eating fish and it's filleted, 99% of people ain't going to know. And I'll tell you this because I've done it. Because I've done it with some guys from Michigan and Colorado. And they had no idea the difference between a brim, a crappie, and a bass when I filleted it. But here's the other thing. You give people Coke and Pepsi, and I did this as a science experiment as a 6th grader, and the people that didn't know the difference between Coke and Pepsi, and I had people that were Coke drinkers and Pepsi drinkers, and they still messed it up. 99% of the people in that test subject had no idea. So when it comes down to eating fish, nobody knows. But I'll tell you this, I grew up in fishing ponds that were bass heavy. And so you go out there and you catch a brim, a bluegill, or a sunfish, and you couldn't put your damn hand around it. But you'd only catch 1 or 2. But then you catch 50 bass that are less than 10 inches. So from an ecological standpoint, it's bass heavy. There's nothing taking those bass out. So that's what we ate. We ate those small bass. Now, I ain't advocating eating no damn, 6-pound bass and this and that.
Yeah.
But in general, what I say is bass ain't as bad as people take it.
No, they don't taste bad. They don't taste bad at all.
But anyway, a little bit of a tangent to get off on there on eating the bass. But yeah, I mean, it's just different where you grow up and what you do. Like, I love to fish. I've gone to ponds and I've caught 4 and 5 pounders and put them back, and people I'm fishing like, whoa, we putting them back? I'm like, hell yeah, we'll keep the small fish. We don't keep the big fish. But it's that's the whole thing about what I like about anglers. What I really like about the kayak world too is I feel like there's a much more prevalent, and people are much more in tune with the fishery, right? With keeping stuff with what's the word I'm looking for? I'm having a brain fart. But anyway, kayak anglers are much more in tune with keeping the fishery good, with putting the fish back and the catch, photo, release. Like I have that push and pull internal struggle with fishing, bedding fish, right? Like, you take those fish away from the bed. And just read an article today that said, a female bass lays like 6,000 eggs or something, whatever it is. What it came down to was only like 5 to 10 of those eggs that she lays survive.
Yeah.
And so, you take that out, and we don't do that with kayak fishing, right? We're
No.
catching those fish. Those fish are spending a minimal amount of time out of the water, and then they're going back into their home water. Like they know where they are. And so that environmental side of it and keeping those fish, the fishery healthy, to me, from a kayak side is awesome.
No, and I get what you're saying. And honestly, if there came a time where they say, you know what, no more fishing for bass during bedding season, I don't have a problem with it. It's gonna suck, but I understand it. I've done bed fishing more this year than I've ever done it before. And it is exciting. It is a very exciting way to catch fish because there are days where it can be like playing a video game. You just catch the lure and they'll hit it. But there are days that you really have to work on your strategy and being stealthy and all that. And it's a great way to break your personal PB. Oh, your personal best. Kind of redundant there, what I said. But anyways. You're right. When it comes, and I'm not trying to pick on boats, but I'll tell you what happened to me. I was fishing at Lake Fork, and I'm not making excuses. I was fishing at the Bass Nation, the kayak series. I didn't win because I'm not that good as the other people out there. Let me clear that. I don't want people to think I'm making excuses. But
don't say that stuff. You're only as good as you think you are.
Yeah. But for the context of this conversation and people don't thinking I'm putting excuses, let's just say this. I didn't lose because of this. But this is one of the reasons that I'm not particularly with bass tournaments and boat tournaments, I should say. Especially on bedding season. Now in Lake Fork they have slots, which is kind of stupid to me because you're in the biggest bass factory in the United States and you're fishing for slots and you can't catch anything other than 18 inches. Go fish at another lake if that's the case. Why fish at a lake that's stocked with 20, 24-inch fish that you can't target? I mean, I don't get it. But anyways, that's another subject.
Yeah, so Sharon Harris is a slot lake.
Yeah.
And people do not like to have tournaments there because they cannot put fish in the slot.
But in spawning season, I went pre-fishing for that tournament. There were tournaments being held on a Monday, and it's not a holiday. It's just a regular Monday school day. And I'm like, why the hell do you have bass boat tournaments on a Monday?
But like Fork and those lakes where you are, and what was the other one where they were catching the huge fish?
Possum Kingdom, but that was not in spawning.
What was the other one before where the
OHIV?
Yeah. I mean, like you have tournaments in the middle of the day there because they know that the boat traffic is going to be less and they can do it. But exactly. I mean, that's
Well, going back to the point, it's like I had some bets marked that I was going to target the next day. When I got there, there was a boat tournament, of course, and they've landed that the female, which I was targeting because we don't have slot limits. We just measured and put him back on the water. She goes back to the nest.
You don't have to worry about
well, they caught the female, but they can't use it in the tournament, so they put the female on the live well while they're targeting the male, which is not going to do anything for me. The male is only like 13 inches. Now here I am. Well, I'm screwed now. Forget about those baits. I had to wait till they leave. By the time they were done trying to catch the male, which they never could, they released the female. The female doesn't even want to go back to its nest. It's just she probably just abandoned that nest. And that's on a slot limit. When the ones is not slot limit, guess what? When they take those fish, they take it to the docks, and that's it. Good luck that female trying to find that nest again. So that again, and I'm not trying to pick up bass boat tournaments, but I think that's a real problem. And people say, well, the numbers still you're taking. When you have a lake like Lake Fork, when it's on spawning season, it's 7 days a week. There's a tournament. It's gonna affect it. It's just gonna affect the population.
Yeah,
that's my point of view. I personally like the concept of a kayak, and me and Craig Dye were talking about this on last week's episode. When you're on a boat, a bass boat tournament, or when you're in a bass boat, and I have a buddy who has a bass boat, when we go out fishing, I never feel like I'm part of nature. Now, because I'm in a, glitter boat, high power, motor boat that's just speeding through one spot to another. When I'm in a kayak, I'm pedaling, whatever I'm doing. I'm one with nature. I feel it that way. That's just the perception that I got because, I'm not disturbing the ecological system in that way. So I think that lends itself to having that mentality of being more eco-friendly and being more conscious about nature because you're closer to nature, not in this gas guzzling glitter rocket speeding one way or the other, feeding your testosterone. And again, not picking up bass boats, but that's just the way it is. When you're in a kayak, there's nothing testosterone driven about it until you hook a big bass. Otherwise, it's just you enjoying the nature. So you lend yourself to be more eco-friendly or more have that more of conservation mentality, in my opinion.
And to go with that though is I think in general when we talk about the bass fishing community as a whole, kayak fishing, bank anglers, the glitter boats, all that, bass anglers as a whole are more conservation centric than other people.
Yeah.
Like, just the folks that I know that crappie fish or fish for catfish, like that. The bass anglers are typically more conservation minded, but that's good, right? That means that from the 70s and 80s, what we've been taught is working. Could we all make improvements? Could the boat world make improvements on their stuff? MLF is a great example of somebody who's made great improvements with fishing and not having to worry about fish traveling an hour to weigh in a live well and being dead. And if they're not dead, where the hell are they released?
Yeah.
They're not released in the same body of water and all this and that. So MLF has done a good job with that. The environmental aspect of what we do is important to keep the sport out there for us to continue to do this.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. And people eating fish and people weighing fish in for tournaments in the grand, I spent time on a fish hatchery. So I got to spend my senior year, the last half of my senior year, my first 2 periods, I went to a fish hatchery and worked. So nice. I got to see the evolution, quote unquote evolution. We'll say that because I can't have a better word right now. But I got to see the growth of fish from, a female and a male bass to a nest to a fry to fingerlings. To where they were separated out, and we stocked ponds. And so, there's those wild animals are way better at surviving than we give them credit for.
Yep.
We look at now these fishing tournaments and we see the impact that it could have, and it does have an impact. Because you're right. Take Lake Fork, right? So let's say they have 5 years of people catching 8-pound fish off the beds and taking them in to weighing them. We don't see the impact that has on that area for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And so that's what we see. And that's why we see lakes turn over sometimes.
Yeah.
Santee Cooper turned over in the early 2000s. We've seen some lake turnovers from that aspect, of it's been overfished or they've had an invasive species. But again, going back to what we're talking about from the kayak side, that's what's really great about the kayak side of it is that the ecological impact, that fish is being caught and it's put it's being put right back in the same water it was caught from. Like it's not being taken to another home. So that is a part from you get to compete, but then what is the impact I have on this fishery 5 years from now? Well, shit, now that fish is going back to it's going back to its bed.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's going to stay there. Hopefully I snagged it. It doesn't come, the glitter boat that comes by that tries to fish for it doesn't bite. But, I think there's an aspect to the kayak fishing community of being a steward to the fish that I don't think you see from a local level. We got MLF, but from the local level where the majority of the competitions are done, you don't see it in any other competition besides kayak fishing. You have that catch photo, the CPR, where still all of your local tournaments, they're bringing those fish in the way.
Yeah.
So you go to the ramp and try to catch some retreads. Because
and tell Mark Pendergraph that. Look what he did on PK, right out of the boat ramp. Credit to him for finding the bite and making the adjustments. But
that's right.
That's one thing. And I do give credit to Texas. Texas really does a great job with their Share Lunker program to replenish those high pressure lakes like Lake Fork to make sure it stays sustainable. It's still, I think I don't know if something like Lake Fork when it gets the amount of boat traffic and anglers coming up, if how much they're gonna have to replenish it moving forward. But that's how you see lakes that have that are not famous in Texas, like PK, because now word's out. OHIV PK, you're gonna see more tournaments going down to PK and OHIV. It's gonna happen now that the secret is out, and we'll see how it sustains. Good thing about Texas is big backs, fast three. Anyway, you throw a stone in any direction, we're about to hit 3 or 4 of them. So can't complain.
Oh yeah, we got a guy on Hookset with our team chat.
Lone Star Kayak Fishing.
Lone Star Kayak Fishing.
Yes, sir.
And so Lone Star talks. So me and him talk back and forth because we're the only Southerners on there.
Yeah.
And so we entered the Jigs and Bigs contest, which is really geared towards multi-species because the guys fishing that are catching muskie and walleye and jackfish and all these cool other fish, these long ass skinny fish. And so me and him were talking, bantering back and forth. And but that's the thing is we're catching. Well, he more than I is catching world class.
He is.
That doesn't count. And then me and him talk about competing. I'm like, well, shit, man. I catch good fish over here in North Carolina, but dude, I ain't catching no 24 inchers left and right. My small fish ain't 20. My small fish is 17.
Shout out to Lone Star Kayak Fishing. Go follow him on Instagram. The guy is, by the way, Lone Star Kayak Fishing, I forgot his first name. If you're out there listening, thank you for what you're doing. I know he's worked hard doing this.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a lineman. So, he finally got some time to fish on the water. I saw on Instagram. I was happy for him. I told him, I was like, yo, thank you for your service, man. I hope when things settle down with all the hurricane season, you get on the water and you land yourself a PB because you've earned it, my friend.
Yeah, I
did a lot of job.
I can't remember his first name either. And Armando, it don't matter. It don't matter because Lone Star Kayak Fishing is where people are going to find him.
Yeah.
But I hope he catches some big fish, but I hope they're all smaller than mine.
Yeah.
That's a competitive edge to me. When we go out and fish these local tournaments, there's some guys here that can damn fish. I mean, they can get at it, but there are also those guys that aren't doing a lot of the national tournaments. They're the local quote unquote hammers that just for whatever reason don't fish these. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, look, dude, I hope you catch a fish every cast. But I really hope I hope they smaller than mine. I don't want you to do bad. I want you to have a good time, but I hope you lose to me. And I tell them that shit. And they look, and I was like, I'm like one of the guys. He's a good friend of mine, Matt Dunn, and Matt Dunn he's one of the hammers here. I'm like, Bo, I'm coming for you. I ain't come for him once yet on my day. But one day I will. One day I will. Because you know what? Kate has called out Drew Gregory for a year. And then the last tournament they fished, not the one at Pickwick, but the last one, I think maybe it was one before, she got him. So I mean, that's the mindset that so kind of to transition into competition from a tournament aspect, like that's the mindset that you got to have. In my opinion, is I don't fish if I don't think I can win. Yeah. Now at 2:30, I might be sitting there going, shit, I got one fish, I ain't gonna win. But going up to that, like my mindset is I'm gonna win. Yeah. And my mind's go ahead. Well, I was gonna say you've grown that, and Josh from Doc Waters has grown that too. Like y'all are good folks to follow from a new kayak angler standpoint. As folks that got into kayak fishing, got into competitive fishing, because a lot of kayak anglers have been competitive anglers from a boat, right? Russ Snyder, dude, all those guys. There's a lot, but you and Josh, Christina's another one. Like, there's folks that have got into kayak angling as noobs, as we'll call them. But their mindset went from I'm learning to I can win. And so, and you and Josh this year especially are two folks that new anglers can really look up to and can follow, because y'all have tracked this from your podcast. You've tracked your journey to where you are now, to where y'all went from not catching limits and finishing in the bottom third to catching limits, finishing in the bottom or in the mid, to now you're up and you're winning tournaments, or you're in the position to win tournaments. Like, when you think about the podcast, you think about your listeners, and you think about kayak angling, people are coming into kayak angling, right? They're looking for information, what you're putting out, your journey. How did I go from somebody that hardly just fished from the bank, blah, 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 got a kayak from Walmart, to now being able to compete and to be in the top 10 in my local tournaments? That's what people want to hear, because you know what? That's where people want to go. And then when they're in the top 10 in the local tournaments, those folks are more likely to then start fishing the national stuff. And like you have shown that. You've shown that growth. You've shown a path for a lot of other people to say, hey, this is what I did. These are the mistakes I made, and this is where I am now. And you can see that growth through your podcast. And so that's it. You can post a video on YouTube right now of you catching a 10-pound fish, and it'll get 500,000 views. You can post a video of you rigging a wacky rig and catching a 4-pound fish and get the same amount of views. You know why? Because people want to know how the hell you did it. Like, how did you get there? And so, like, your podcast really shows your journey into how you've been to start competing. And let's be, in all honesty, Tennessee and Texas are the two most competitive states locally for kayak bass fishing. You can't argue that. Here you are finishing in the top 5 of tournaments. Like, I mean, that's a journey people can travel with you to learn. And so that's a big impact.
No, and you hit it on the nose. When I started the kayak fishing podcast, I was like, well, I don't know anything about kayak fishing. When I started kayak fishing, I was like, well, I don't know nothing about kayak fishing. And people were like, well, that's the point. They can relate. And it's one thing when you talk about, when I started to learn about kayak fishing, I would listen to, let's say, Tactical Bassing. Great podcast. Wait, not podcast. Great YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Problem with it is I couldn't relate at all to what they're saying, because to me, there was like, are they even speaking English? Because I didn't understand it. Because their mindset is of somebody that's already mastered bass fishing and just wants to take it to the next level. It's more like advanced learning. When I started the kayak fishing podcast, Bass, Kayak, and Beers, it was the concept of like, perfect. I have this audience that is now booming, because especially with the pandemic now, that is getting into kayak fishing that can't relate to the Russ Snyders and the Drew Gregorys and not no shot at them, of course. But the problem is they don't. When you get to a level of, like Russ Snyder probably, and not picking on him, but he's been so good for so long. How do you learn the basics of bass fishing when you've done it for so early, for so long, been so successful? It seems like mundane to learn the basics of it. So it's harder for people like that level, and I say that with a compliment, to share their knowledge and help other people, because they're at a certain level where, where I'm at in the infancy or when I started, I couldn't relate to much of the things they're saying, because they were talking about, their mindset was like, you already know the basics. So this is where I know. Where my mindset is like, I don't even know the basics yet. And one of the things about it is like, when that goes into the podcast. When it talks into tournaments, I remember talking to Sam Jones about it, kind of helping me grow the podcast and everything's like, well, I don't ever think I'll do competing because I'm not good enough. How can I compete against Russ Snyder, who grew up fishing and who fished all over the world, all over the United States, who was a tour guide for bass fishing? He's done it for 3 or 4 decades. How am I supposed to just pick up this sport 5 years ago, compete against that knowledge? Because it really is about knowledge. You can be the faster, stronger. That's not a translate a crap into fishing. What?
Wisdom.
Exactly.
Wisdom.
And that got to a point.
It's wisdom is the implementation of knowledge.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that, because I was just about to mention that. It's like knowledge is one thing. Wisdom is knowing how to apply that knowledge. And when you're on the water, when my first tournaments, my first year doing tournaments, I understand I'm not going to win. I'm just here to learn. And I would talk to people after the tournament was done and ask them, what worked for them, what didn't work for them. Now this year, I go into the mentality like, in my heart of hearts, maybe I know I'm not as good as the great anglers, but my mentality is I'm going to beat them.
But
I'm going to go out there and beat them.
I was Art Pendergraph at his home lake.
And my mentality was, as soon as I saw, my mentality as soon as I saw, when I entered that tournament, Mark Pendergraph and Brian Howell hadn't signed up. And it's a small bluegrass tournament that they've never signed up. It's usually some local guys from West Texas, which are really good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but there's not the big names. When I see them at the captain's meeting, I'm like, at first I'm like, crap, Mark Pendergraph and Brian Howell are here. There goes my chances to win. But that quickly turned the mindset. It was like, game on. And my mindset was, and I said it on that podcast, I want Mark Pendergraph to have a great tournament. I want Brian Howell. I'm not going to the expectation, well, maybe they'll suck today. No, I wanted to fish first. I wanted Mark Pendergraph and Brian Howell to win, to end up second and third. I want to say I beat them at their best. Because that's what it's all about. I'm not there at this point of my career, kayak fishing. I say career as loosely. It's not really a career. But at this point of learning into kayak fishing, I'm like, you know what? I want to beat the best. I want to compete against the best. And I don't want to beat Russ Snyder when he only caught 1 fish one day. I want to beat Russ Snyder when he caught 5 fish or he caught 10 fish. And that's the mindset that I have now. Now, whether that's going to translate to win further down the line, I don't know. But I know I'm going to need that mindset to give myself a shot to win.
Yeah, and so that's like when we think about, and let's take it like your podcast started as an entry-level podcast. Your journey into kayak fishing and then into competitive kayak fishing, right? That was the journey of the podcast. And so you think about it is you go from, oh shit, God, I hope I catch a fish today,
Yeah.
to all right, I'm catching a fish. I hope I catch a limit.
Yeah.
And then by year 2, 3, whatever it is, you're like, shit, actually, I expect to be in the top 10.
Yeah. I expect to be in the money.
Yeah, exactly. You expect to win that money. And so that's a progression. But see, that's what so many people you've talked about this, and Paddle and Ben have had these podcasts on the growth of kayak fishing. And a lot of people have had this talk of growth, and where we are right now, in my opinion, is the golden age of kayak fishing. Where it goes from here, if it continues to quote unquote grow, you're going to have the separation between the top professional anglers and the anglers making a living on this. You're going to have a separation between them and the majority of other people that are fishing these tournaments. Like when somebody's livelihood is based on fishing these kayak tournaments, there's a different, it's going to be a different interaction. And that is, look, I played college football, and I saw college football players go from I didn't play in the NFL, but I know folks that went from college to NFL. When you go to the NFL, it doesn't matter if you're a number 1 draft pick or if you're a 7th round. You're competing against somebody who has been on that team for 3, 4, 7 years, and they're buddies. That's their buddy. Like, they don't want him to lose their job. So when you get into this this aspect of kayak fishing growing, it's great that the sport grows big, because then it offers more opportunities for people to become professionals where they make a living on this aspect. Now, it does not diminish people like you and me who just want to fish local tournaments and these local national tournaments and make money and have an opportunity to fish in the TOCs. But it changes that dynamic. And what, to get to the point is that, like, the kayak community is very close-knit still. And I like that.
Yeah.
And what I struggle with is it growing? Does that tight-knit community start to kind of unravel?
Mm-hmm.
Or does that tight-knit community continue and create something very different than other professional sports? Like, does it create that kind of, working together aspect? I don't know. It's interesting.
A lot of it's going to be the money.
Yes.
Once the sport grows, and I'm convinced that it's going to grow to a sport where it's a lot of money's coming in and people are going to make a livelihood out of it.
You can win $100,000 a damn tournament, Armando.
Yeah.
You tell me you're going to spend. You come down to Jordan Lake, North Carolina, and you can win $100K, and you're catching 22-inch fish all day long. Are you going to come to me and say, "Hey, Paul, come with me. We can catch 22-inch fish"?
Yeah, that's the thing. Eventually,
are you going to do that, Armando? Would you do that for me?
I'll say yes because I'm a nice guy.
No, you wouldn't. Not for $100K.
Nah, that's true.
You'd be like, "Hey, Paul, come fish with me. Look, I'm going to catch all the fish I can catch, and when they quit biting, they're yours." But no, you're not.
Yeah.
And you would be stupid to. You're talking about changing an opportunity for your family. $100,000 to catch 5 fish.
And we saw that. And I'm not gonna dive into the details of it because it's not worth it. But we saw a little bit of bad blood in the Bass Nation Kayak Series championship in PK, Possum Kingdom. And again, I'm not going to go into the details of who and what, but we saw, if you follow the KBN group page, you know most of us know the story, and that's part of it. Once real money becomes involved, and I actually wasn't that much of a money, but anyways, that's a subject for another time. When the ability to not just make money but get real sponsorships are going to pay you, and they're going to be based on your success and what you also do on social media, bad blood is going to come in at some point. Because right now, the people that are involved in the sport are just people that love the sport, like you and I, myself. We love the sport. We don't do it for the money because there's not really that much money to win. I mean, you lose more money than what you make unless you win a national championship.
That's right.
Basically, and that's 3 guys in a season: the KBF, the Hobie BOS, and the Bass Nation Kayak Series. Yeah. That's the only 3 probably, and maybe somebody like you and Minor who's won a couple of tournaments, make something like 18,000 this year. But again, that's less than 1% of the kayak fishing community. But the people that are getting involved in it is because they love the sport. Once the sport grows, there's more money. There's people get more involved. It's like, I can actually make a living out of this. That changes things, and eventually, competitive juices are gonna spoil into bad bloods and stuff like that, and it's gonna happen. We try to keep it. We try to protect it. That's what I try to do with the podcast. Try to protect as much as I can. But eventually, money's the root for all evil, as cliche as it sounds.
Yeah, and moving into that side of making money in kayak fishing, right? Like, so I got into kayak fishing to compete. And why do you get into something to compete? Is because you want to win, and an offset of winning is you're going to win something, and in fishing it's going to be money. And so, but you look at it, and Ryan Lambert is kind of he's a driving force.
It is. He's one of the most influential ones.
You're right now. He's a driving force in anglers branding themselves as professional anglers, because we can name some names of folks that are at the top of the kayak angling game, but you would never know. But like 99% of the people would never know who they are. But then you can go search kayak angling, or you could say a kayak bass fish angler, whatever it is, and there's 2 or 3 names people could spit out. But they're probably the folks, they're folks that aren't necessarily winning tournaments or in the
not household names. Yeah,
they're not making social media content. They're not branding themselves. And so you look at it, and I say this from an aspect of watching your growth through social media. You have started to brand yourself. You've started you're not going on a fishing trip and posting 5 pictures on Instagram of the 5 fish you caught all at once. You're now breaking it down to 5 catches, 5 pictures. You're promoting yourself, and I know you're working with what's his name?
Charlie Wells.
Yeah, Charlie Wells. He's been on podcast a couple of times, I think now.
Yeah.
So like you're branding yourself. You're making yourself desirable from people. Like, look, fishing, it's not the NFL. You don't have 10 million people or whatever it is watching you every Saturday. But if you get 100,000 people watching a video that you made, and Jim Bob from the MLF wins 3 tournaments, but he has no social media presence, like, where's the better value in that? And I think that's where the kayak angling sport comes to is that it's entry level. It gives the people an opportunity to come into fishing and make money and to fish where they wouldn't be able to before.
That's true. And we see Kristen Fisher doing this now, growing. I think she's one of the ones that's kind of leading that new generation of kayak anglers, where they're mixing talent with content creators. We see great content. It's hard to be a great content creator and a great angler at the same time, because both of them take a lot of time, to work with. There's a lot that goes behind the scenes. And if you listen to any of our podcasts with Charlie Wells, which I've done too, he'll tell you, the work that it goes behind the scenes to create great content, and when you look at the work that you have to go to be consistent at tournaments with pre-fishing and all that, there's not a lot of room to do anything else unless your ideal, situation allows it. But if you're a family man with a regular job, it's going to be hard to accomplish that. But anyways, speaking of branding ourselves, Paul, I've had you for almost an hour, so I don't want to take any more time, take you any more time away from your family. But
I could talk for 3 hours.
I know you can.
Fishing, I don't have a stop button. Luckily, my co-host on Bass and Brews has a stop button because I don't. So I could go forever.
But anyways, go before I let you go. I wanted you to get a chance to plug in Bass and Brews. Where can people follow you? What's the show all about? And also anybody you want to thank. Any sponsors? I know you already mentioned Hooksets or the guys at Hookset Hoodlums. If I say that right, go ahead. You mention it better than me. Go ahead.
Follow Hookset Hoodlums, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. They sell apparel. We got these hats, these underwater robbery hats and pond wrecker hats, and other stuff. They're great folks. We promote each other, and when I got an opportunity to go into being a pro staff member, and I know Armando, I know your thoughts on pro staff, but when you go into a pro staff, like sure I get a discount, but I don't even care about that because the advantage or what we do for each other is we promote each other and we help each other grow as anglers. So go to Hookset. You can use Heels 10 HEELS to get you a little 10% discount. They got some really good apparel. The other is a local. If you're not in the North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina area, it probably won't matter to you. But if you go to Bolt Lightning, they're the one and only sponsor of Paul Hill's Fishing. And Kevin Fontaine there with Bolt Lightning and Fontaine Landscaping. Great dude. Kind of, believed in what I was doing and was happy to sponsor me. Outside of that, check out Bass and Brews Fishing Podcast. We're on Apple. What's the other one? I don't listen to
Spotify, Google Play.
Apple and Spotify. It's me and Alex. Alex is going to be in and out because he is the host. Alex is the brains behind everything. I show up and try to be funny.
You're the eye candy.
Yes. I'm the handsome one. Thank you, Armando. Finally, somebody said that shit online. Yes.
It had to be said.
But Alex runs it. But he's going to be gone because Alex is finishing his last year in the Coast Guard. Thank you, Alex, for your service.
Yes, definitely.
But the podcast is centric into a kayak fishing, content creation, bass fishing. Like we really try to hit different avenues of the fishing world from a bank and kayak fishing aspect. So like the content creation and the folks that are just getting into it and competition. So all that. And also Armando will be a guest host at some point.
Definitely. Yes. Looking forward to that.
He will be because my co-host, which is the real host, Alex, will be gone for a while he's doing his final trip. So Armando will be a co-host, but come check us out at that. And besides that, check me out at Paul Hills. Paul Hills Fishing on TikTok, as I like to call it. I don't have a lot there. But, just, hey, come say hey. I like to give out any information I can. If you're in the North Carolina area, holla at me, and let's go fish.
Awesome. And the cat tea expert. Let's not forget about that.
Well, look, I would say I'm the cat tea expert, but about a year and a half ago, Walmart did away with their cat teas. and so now it's all Amazon, and it kind of sucks because I can't go try them on because cat tees are cheap, so they don't fit right. So I got 2 cat tees now that don't fit right because I couldn't try them on before I bought them.
I'll be going to Austin pretty soon to visit my sister, so I'll try to get you. I'll try to get you a couple and ship them out.
I hear you, buddy.
All right, Paul, thank you so much, man. I'm looking forward to being a special guest host. A big fan of what you're doing. I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate the support to my podcast. It means a lot to me, man. I do it for my audience more than anything else. Like you said, we don't really make money or any money at all, very little, if any, on this. So I really appreciate it, Paul. It's an honor to have you, man, and I hope you come back soon.
Oh yeah, and Armando, that's the thing is like you were one of the first 3 or 4 podcasts that I found when I journeyed into this kayak fishing aspect. Is you, Josh from Dark Waters, and I can't remember the other one. Is a paddle and fin? It wasn't a paddle and fin for news.
Brian Sure by the OG show.
No.
Bass fishing.
It was the 2 guys from. I'm having a brain for it. From the ones that mostly saltwater fish. The Tide. What is it?
Oh, Chasing the Tide. Yeah, Dustin Doodoo. Dustin Nichols Doodoo.
Somehow I got to them dumbasses, Chasing the Tide dumbasses, and I listened to that one even though I don't fish no damn saltwater fish. But anyway,
it's a good podcast. It's a good podcast.
No, it is. I listen to it every week, and the shit they're fishing for, I probably won't fish for once a year. But regardless of what I'm saying is like your podcast is one of those that it bridges that gap from somebody that did not have, that just got into kayak fishing. Look, fishing, I had a lot of knowledge. Kayak fishing, you bridge that gap that made me feel like I could learn from listening to what you're saying. And you also had guests on. So you and Josh really, those were the first 2 podcasts that I expected every week to listen to because it helped me get to where I am now. Like, I wasn't a beginner fisherman by any means, but you gave me that avenue to kind of get to where I'm in the kayak world because it's much different, and everybody will tell you that. So I thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Paul, thank you so much. For those out there listening, once again, this is Bass, Kayak, and Beers. We appreciate it making it this far. Go check out my sponsor, Douglas Rock. Go to douglasoutdoors.com. Check out their full lineup. Big shout out to Paul and Alex for Bass and Beers. Alex will be here soon. As soon as I can get him, we'll square something out so we can get part 2 of the Bass and Beers podcast. If you're going to be on the water, wear your PFD. Stay safe. Have a great day, everyone. Paul, thank you so much.